Welcome to Overtime here on WOTM. I'm Gerhard Mathangani, joined once again finally by our expert researcher / historian, Mark Everett Kelly. Mark, it's been a minute since you were able to come on, but good thing is that we have you on now right before one of the biggest times of the year. During your time as a researcher at ESPN, you did a lot with college basketball. It's one of many sports you know very well, but obviously this time of year has to be really, really fun. Millions of people have already figured their brackets out, and with all these different apps and platforms, you could file in a whole bunch more. I'm pretty sure by tonight and tomorrow we'll have a lot more brackets filled out. Let's talk big picture, what this tournament means, and then now, after the bubble year last year, getting back into the tournament once again this year as it normally was.
There's so many matchups that are intriguing when you look at now the second round of the NCAA tournament. I still call it the first round.
Oh, yeah, same.
I might look like an idiot to some people when I'm talking about it.
No, I think most people actually do that as well.
Yeah, but especially locally. Because when I saw that Auburn was going to be playing Jack State, I said, wow, this is going to be a really great matchup just for the local community, because Jack State, they played Alabama really tough. A couple of years ago when they made the NCAA tournament, their only other appearance, they played Louisville very tough. So I think that you have an excellent chance to see one of the underdogs in the area, but everybody I talk to when I go and sub goes to Jack State. So it is a heavily attended school, and then of course Auburn and Alabama are the big boys here. So the fact that JSU gets to play one of the big boys, and the fact that Auburn has not been playing well lately, and you look at some of the teams that they've lost to, how they've lost, having problems shooting the ball. I think JSU shooting over 38% from three-point range, one of the better three-point shooting teams in the country, could give them a little problem. Auburn has shown a propensity for sitting on the ball, not executing their half-court offense. You look at the last, since they played at Missouri, shooting 28% from three-point range and 40% from the field in those games. They have four losses, 9 wins. That's when they really started to look a little lost offensively. Kessler wasn't as dominating as he was. They're kind of standing around and watching Smith play because he's the best player on the team, but they're deep enough to where they don't have to do that. Green is one of their team leaders. A lot of their offense came early in the year when they were setting up pick and rolls a little better than they are now. Now it's like they seem to stand around and watch. Not much movement, not much passing. Averaged many more assists before than they did recently, last 13 games. And also, they're not getting to the free throw line like they did because they're not penetrating and they're kicking the ball out.
Exactly, and that's the Auburn side of things, and I think it's a really good breakdown of the Auburn Tigers. Meanwhile, for Jacksonville State, and you made mention that where you work, everybody's cheering for the Gamecocks. Obviously, the number 15 seed, they will not be the team that most people advancing to the round of 32. But of the big upsets, we always see 12s beat 5s. We've seen a lot of the number 4 seeds go down to the number 13 seeds. Not as many, but we've had some of the 3 seeds go down in the first round. What are some of the things that Jacksonville State can do here in this matchup to be able to pull off a monster matchup against Auburn and pull off the unthinkable?
Darian Adams is their leading scorer. He can shoot the ball from three-point range, obviously shooting over 36%, almost 37% from the field. If he's making his shots and Jacksonville's able to penetrate and get him open looks, we've seen Auburn show a propensity for being susceptible to that. So, when they lost to Arkansas, not a very good shooting team at all, was able to take advantage of that, almost losing to Georgia. Georgia, again, took advantage of that, Missouri. And then the free throw difference, where you look at Jack State, they don't have many guys that are averaging over, I think they have 2 guys, and Adams is one of them. And Finch, I believe, is the other, of averaging over 3 free throws a game. If you're able to get Smith in foul trouble, you're able to get Kessler in foul trouble, which is really hard to do because Kessler knows how to use his body, then I could see them taking advantage of that and then Auburn not knowing where to go for their offense. But you heard the team has to play perfect to win. I wouldn't say that that's true for Jack State, but there's such a talent difference that Auburn can make some mistakes. Auburn can have an off-shooting night and still win. Jack State can't. Jack State has to play like that Villanova against Georgetown game where they shot 78% from the field, didn't really turn the ball over much to win. I just don't think that there is enough talent overall on Jack State. Now, if they have a lights-out night and shoot, 18 for 25 from three-point range, yeah, they could win. But I don't know. Auburn's defense is awfully good. And even with their offensive woes, they've still been playing very good on defense.
That's exactly right. And JSU has shot the ball really well, but you're right. They'll need an outstanding performance from three in order to come away with the win. However, this is an experienced basketball team, and head coach Ray Harper likes that factor of his team going into the first round.
Well, that's what we had talked about. And when all these guys came back for this last year, I mean, this was a goal of theirs. And there was no secret our goal was to win an ASUN championship. And this team's had some emotional highs and lows here recently, but right now we're excited that we'll have an opportunity to continue playing on Friday.
So on Friday, that's the game number 2 of the day. Alabama also plays on Friday, as does UAB. All the state teams play on the second day there of the first round. What are some of your thoughts on this Alabama team that made a Sweet 16 run last year? They were a high seed last year, a really good seed, and now they find themselves as a 6th seed waiting tonight's opponent. What are your thoughts on the Tide as they now brace for their first round game?
I think last year was a year where not many people expected much from them going into the year.
Right.
Then they win the regular season title. They win the SEC tournament, very exciting SEC tournament, and like kind of sticking it to Will Wade a little bit, which made it even better.
Yeah.
So you had that. Then UCLA was a team I thought they were significantly better than. You remember UCLA was a first 4 team, and they barely got by Michigan State.
Right.
So I figured UCLA wasn't going to be much of a matchup for Alabama, that especially defensively they would be able to beat them and take advantage of them. And UCLA wound up going and almost winning the national championship, beating Gonzaga team. So they did exceptionally well in the tournament. Nobody really saw that coming. You look at Alabama this year, not as strong defensively anymore.
Right.
They were lights out defensively last year. That was their staple.
Right.
Herb Jones was a guy that you knew was going to provide not only leadership, but he led the team in multiple categories.
Right.
He was a guy that could pick up loose balls, very active, and he just led by example. So he was inspiring in a lot of things, and the team kind of looked for him for that as well. They don't have that real senior leadership. Shackelford is a guy that can provide it, but you look at the last game they played against Vanderbilt. They're leading 38-28 at half. Shackelford shooting the ball pretty well. And then defensively, they just have a meltdown.
Yep.
Offensively, they shot the ball poorly, scored 38 points in both first and second half. Shot the ball under 30% from three-point range, 4 from 16 in the first half, 4 for 18 in the second half. And then Shackelford made 6 of those three-pointers. So he shot 6 for 16. Rest of team, 2 for 18 from deep. They can't win that way.
Right.
Defensively, you can't allow Vanderbilt to shoot 15 for 30 in the second half after holding them to 6 to 23 in the first half.
Right.
So that consistency defensively isn't there. That's what surprises me.
Right.
Because Vanderbilt before that game said, we want Alabama. We think we can beat them.
Right.
You have bulletin board material right there, and you come out and you lay an egg in the second half, allowing them to shoot 15% after suffocating them defensively in the first half.
Right.
They need to get some of that back. They need to get that nastiness about them on defense. I don't know if they can. I honestly don't expect Alabama to win a game in this tournament.
Wow, and obviously they have to wait the winner of Rutgers or Notre Dame, but whoever comes out of that, you like the Irish or the Scarlet Knights.
I like Rutgers because being obviously Northeast guy, I kind of have a leaning towards the toughness, especially playing over in New Jersey. A lot of those guys, Jersey isn't a hotbed for basketball talent. Rutgers has kind of been a laughing stock, whatever conference they were in, the Big East Conference, and now they're in the Big Ten. I don't know how they're in the Big Ten. But they are a tough team this year. They play in a tough arena. Like their fans are waiting for a winner, so they really don't give them much slack. And I think they'll be able to take advantage of that. And they have that little edge that Alabama had last year they don't seem to have.
Exactly, and obviously they'll be on a little roll if they're able to get over the Irish in
They've
the
beaten
first
good
round
teams
matchup.
too, Rutgers.
They have beaten some teams, a bunch of teams that are in this tournament bracket. Meanwhile, head coach Nate Oates talked a little bit about what Mark mentioned earlier about just locking in, staying focused from the first half to the second.
I think when you're locked in, you're locked in. I think when you're worried about the wrong stuff, you're worried about the wrong stuff, and your mind's cluttered. You walk to the free throw line, you're thinking about everything you shouldn't be thinking about. When you're locked into what you have to do to win the game, you're focused on whatever it is. When you're on defense, you focus on defense. When you're on offense, you focus on offense. When you're step to the free throw line, you're focused on what you need to do to make a free throw. Like, and some of it's, I think some guys maybe put a little too much pressure on themselves. Like, no, we just need you to make the free throw to help the team win. You don't need to, focus on what you have to do for yourself. That backfires as well, too.
So Alabama's in, Auburn's in, and those are two of the 6 teams that are in the dance in the SEC. Let's forecast what we think, what you think here of the set teams in the Southeastern Conference that are in the tournament field, and did Texas A&M get hosed not being able to be that 7th team in the bracket?
I don't think so. I think they started off well. They were 4-0 in conference play. They lost like 8 straight, and they looked bad losing those 8 straight. Then they got hot at the end of the year. It wasn't good enough. If they wanted to make tournament, they should have won the conference tournament. And that's, a lot of teams have been in a position where they're almost there. You think they've done enough, and then they lose, and oh well. That's them's the breaks, as they say. Were they good enough? Overall, I think that they had shown the ability to play with a lot of teams. But again, like everyone seems to be in the SEC, inconsistent. And you can't lose 8 straight in conference play, even though you rallied at the beginning and end of the season and expect to think, oh, well, we deserve to get in because we made it to the conference championship game. And we did beat a bunch of good teams. A lot of teams in that conference beat good teams. So that's why I don't really feel bad for Texas A&M. Maybe they can take another step next year, much like their football team, and really make their mark in this conference.
That's exactly right. What about the other teams in the SEC? You'll see the first-round matchups for those guys. Anything that you see that sticks out, or do you see – we'll talk about our Final Four in a little bit, so you don't have to give those that. But as far as the teams that you see making some good runs and teams playing well out of this league as they go into the first round.
Well, here's an upset special, okay? I have Vermont beating Arkansas. Why? Because Vermont is a senior team. They dominated the American East. They went 17-1 in conference play. They have 2 guys, Finn Sullivan and Ryan Davis, who are shooting over 40% from three-point range. And I think they're a veteran team that can beat and take advantage of an Arkansas team who shoots the ball really poorly, shooting 30% from three-point range, 44% from the field in their last 7 games. 28% and 41% in those 2 categories. That's why I think they can win. Kentucky, I have losing actually to Murray State in the second round. I think they'll beat St. Peter's. Tennessee is a team I think can get to the Elite 8. I don't understand how they're, like we talked about, they're a 3 seed and Kentucky and Auburn are 2 seeds. When they beat both of them during the regular season. And then they wind up winning the SEC tournament. Obviously, Auburn, I think, is going to advance. Now, LSU, again, I hate Will Wade. I really do. I always thought that guy was a jerk, and he should be punished for some of the things he did that they never held him accountable for. Finally, he got held accountable. He is gone, but I think it's going to be rough for the team because as much as I despise him, he was a good coach, and he really did love his players, and his players loved him. So that aspect of him, I think LSU is really going to miss. I think they're probably glad to get rid of a guy who was a known cheater, in my opinion, a felon, and should no longer ever be able to coach in college basketball.
Exactly, and LSU did that right before the tournament, which means you have to be sticking strong to your convictions, knowing just how big where your team's about to head here back into this big dance. Meanwhile, some interesting first-round matchups. Do you see any upsets here or any of the ones that might pop out just from your standpoint in general? I know you mentioned the Vermont-Arkansas game. Do you like any other big-time matchups? These are just the interesting lines according to Vegas.
A couple of these. South Dakota State, another senior-laden team that's one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country. Providence is one of those Big East teams that can beat anybody and then show up and shoot 2 for 30 from three-point range. So I think they can beat South Dakota State can beat them. UIC, University of Loyola Chicago, I think they can beat Ohio State. Actually, it's not UIC, but Loyola Chicago. I think they can beat Ohio State. I think they're another team that can shoot the ball well. They're another team that has a lot of experience. And Ohio State is susceptible to a bad shooting night too. All these teams that I mentioned are susceptible to having a bad shooting night. And if they're not shooting the ball well,
exposed,
that's going to leave them. UAB is a team that can shoot the ball well. And Houston, you've seen Houston fall flat on their face, losing to Memphis a couple times.
Right.
Memphis was good, but not good enough to really hammer them like they did.
Yep.
Obviously, Vermont and Virginia Tech and Texas, you could switch.
Yeah.
To your 6-11. Virginia Tech 13-2 to the last 15 games, shooting almost just under 40% from three-point range. I think they're a team that I think they will definitely win this game. Texas is known for their struggles on offense. I don't understand this seeding at all, so I expect Virginia Tech to win.
Interesting stuff. All right, so final things here, and that's great statistical information. Let's now predict it going into the first round. Here's your Elite Eight and Final Four matchups.
Davidson, another team. Bob McKillop, a guy, a Long Island guy, graduated from Hofstra. The last time, or the only time really, that he won NCAA tournament games was back in 2008 when they made it to the Elite Eight and lost to Kansas by 2 when they had who? Steph Curry on their team. I think this Davidson team is another team that shoots really well. They have big-time players that they can isolate and take advantage of some of their size. I think they're going to get to the Elite Eight. But obviously Gonzaga is a team that lost last year when everybody expected them to win. The next year theory, I think, will fall in for Gonzaga. Nobody's paying attention to them. Nobody's talking about them. Still alive. Loads of talent. I think they'll make the Final Four. UCLA, again, off of last year, is making the Elite Eight. Purdue is a team I really like. Has a big man, about 7'4", that dominates. They can shoot the three. One of the best teams in the Big Ten. Arizona, 30 wins. Them and Murray State, the most in college basketball. Villanova, very solid Big East team that's won championships 2018, 2016. Kansas, I don't like the fact that they got manhandled by Kentucky. I think they're good enough to make the Elite Eight. And Auburn, has all the talent in the world. I expect them to eventually play well.
Right.
I think they can make it to the Final Four. And then in the Final Four, I have Gonzaga beating Purdue. Or any other year, I would say Purdue, but because of next year theory, I'm taking Gonzaga. And Villanova beating Auburn, and then Gonzaga beating Villanova. Again, Villanova, very tough in the NCAA tournament.
Right.
Experienced team. I expect them to show who they are. Kind of like Duke was for a little while, Michigan State was under under Tom Izzo. You have teams that play well for specific periods, and I think Villanova, for the last 6-7 years, has really shown the ability to win NCAA tournament games. So as a 2 seed, I expect them to continue doing that. It'd be nice to see Auburn play like they played earlier in the year when their only loss was to UConn. And I think they can. It's just going to be interesting to see how they come out and if they can click offensively and get back to some of those things. If Kessler can dominate like he used to, and if they can penetrate and start shooting the ball better.
Yeah, mine's not too far away from yours. I do like Gonzaga, but I also like Duke to make that regional final as well. UCLA is playing good basketball. I like Kentucky to not only win, but get into the Final Four. Arizona and Tennessee, that was a hard one to pick, but I'll take the Wildcats in that one. Meanwhile, Kansas and Auburn, I like Auburn in that matchup as well. So I like Gonzaga, and I like Auburn in that Final Four, and I think Gonzaga, I think this is their year as well. All right, well, coming up next year on Overtime, we will shift gears over to Major League Baseball. Huge day for the Atlanta Braves. We'll talk that. We'll also have some NFL coming up next year on our program.